Welcome to the Pinch to Zoom podcast, the show where we zoom in on the latest tech news, products, and trends. I'm Stetson.
I'm Gabe.
And in this episode, we're talking about our dream camera, what features we want, what qualities we want it to have, the build. It's going to be an exciting episode. And we thought of this actually because we had some pretty exciting camera news these past 2 weeks, right, Gabe?
Yes, this is, the NAB would be happening around now. So camera companies have from, Canon to, I think Nikon dropped some stuff. We might even get some GoPro news, I'm hoping. But we've also got, upcoming news from DJI. Really everyone who makes any cameras, even some smartphone stuff, came out with their news in the past couple weeks and will be coming out with more news in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we've got tons of... It's kind of surprising, actually. I would have thought camera manufacturers would have slowed down their products and release cycles, but it really seems like they were gearing up for the Summer Olympics, and they still had everything on schedule almost.
Yeah,
so.
I think a lot of it is stuff they probably pretty much already had, started manufacturing. They'd finished designing. They were just working on promo and stuff like that. If anything, maybe they pushed it back by a couple weeks, but most of it was done. And so it was pretty easy to, just do a press release instead of a keynote, or do an online live stream instead of some big, multi-person event.
Right, well, let's get into quick news, so roll that intro.
Quick news. First up in quick news, we have all the new products that were released. I know we already mentioned a couple of them, so let's get into the Canon products that we saw released. The big one, which got quickly overshadowed, was the Canon C300 Mark II. Now, this is their cinema camera.
Whoa, Gabe, what? Canon had another camera come out?
Okay, fine. Well, I'll talk about this one later then, because the big one was the Canon EOS R5 specs that dropped. This camera isn't even out yet. They haven't put a release date on it, but they just keep, sprinkling a little bit of like specs here and there to keep people salivating and from going with any other cameras from other manufacturers.
Right. I mean, they've been just sprinkling the information out, and I mean, I'm basically drooling over this camera. What do we now know about the EOS R5 that makes it so compelling?
I don't think you're alone with drooling, by the way. I think pretty much any online creator is just like head over heels. Can't wait for this. Anyway, so the big specs: 8K 30 FPS internal, and this is raw recording. Also, not to be outdone, it's going to be able to do DCI 4K 120 in 422 10-bit Canon log or HDR. So that's 4K 120 FPS internal recording.
That is nuts. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, like, this is a cinematographer's dream. You're just getting high quality files, primed and juicy and ripe for editing, and it's just going to be beautiful.
The big thing, is it's high specs. So this is impressive for, people like you and I who are more like online creators, videographers, who are, we see 8K, great. 4K 120, cool. That can help my workflow. And it's also a camera that can take photos. But the really important thing is for people like those who are looking at the C300 Mark II or Mark III, the more cinema cameras, and who just want a B camera that, the EOS R5 is probably going to be around $5,000, $4,000, which is cheap compared to a cinema camera. This camera can actually work as a proper B camera because it has really good codecs built in, and, the footage will match with the actual cinema camera.
Right, and let's not forget Canon's dual pixel autofocus, which they've confirmed will be working in 4K and 8K and slow motion video. And we're going to have Canon's color science, and a lot of people are huge fans of this.
Yeah, that is gonna pretty much the big things we heard. The other little thing they put out about this camera is they confirmed that the two slots, they said it was going to have two card slots. One is going to be CF Express, and the other is actually going to still be an SD card slot. So the CF Express is a lot more expensive cards. I think they're like $200-$300 potentially. But that's going to enable, of course, that 8K 30 in recording, and then still having that SD card slot if you don't really need that higher frame rates or higher resolution recording is good, because you can have a cheaper way to back up your footage in the camera.
If you're a creator, you're excited about this. But Gabe, you mentioned Canon, they released another camera?
Yeah, this is the one that if you're more into cinematography and broadcast video, you're going to be into this camera. It's $11,000 though. It's the C300 Mark III. It's a Super 35 cinema camera. Also uses the dual pixel AF technology, but the big thing here is you're getting an upgrade on the dynamic range using what they're calling dual gain output, which is kind of similar to the dual pixel AF. Basically, it uses those 2 pixels to one capture underexposed, one capture slightly overexposed, combines them together, and it gives you HDR footage with about 16 stops of dynamic range, which is very impressive if you consider that most of the high-end DSLR's mirrorless cameras are maybe like 12.
Yeah, honestly, what surprised me most about this camera is that it's only 12 megapixels. And as we discussed in our APS-C versus full frame podcast episode, actually, you mentioned this quite a lot, is the larger pixel size helps reduce noise, helps give you that better dynamic range, and just gives you a cleaner, much nicer image to look at. So pixels or megapixels aren't everything, everyone. And this is a pro camera targeted for pro video creators.
Yeah, that's actually a good. I wish we could segue, but pause that segue there because that will eventually lead to what we're talking to when we get to future cameras. So just hang on to that in your back of your mind, and we'll use that for a future segue. But moving on, other new products we had out. We had 2 new smartphones actually in the past week. Very different kind of. I would say, yeah, pretty much. Even though the OnePlus 8 series, technically they're trying to market their phone as a budget smartphone, but then iPhone said hold my beer and came out with the iPhone SE. So let's start with that, the iPhone SE. What did we see from Apple?
This is basically a fan favorite where Apple took a classic design. It's actually essentially the iPhone 6 design, which came out way back in 2015, I believe. And they iterated on it. We eventually got to the iPhone 8. And what the iPhone SE is the internals of an iPhone 11 packed into the body of an iPhone 8. And this is basically giving you insane performance with the A13 Bionic chip, along with a compact form factor, a great screen. You still got Touch ID, and it's only $400. So this is where Apple is just like, all right, OnePlus, hold my beer, and is dominating.
I just said that.
Yeah, I mean, but I was trying to reference that, but
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it was incredible. It's really.
Does it have wireless charging too?
Yeah, it does have wireless charging. The only thing it's missing is 3D Touch. Like this, Apple has officially stopped supporting 3D Touch. So,
but I think it's for what it includes for $400. I think people, if you told them a year ago that Apple is going to be selling a phone for $400,
they would laugh at you. So get this, right? The iPhone 11 starts at $700 for just $50 more, $750. You can get the iPhone SE plus AirPods plus an Apple Watch. Right? Like, just
pretty
think
impressive.
About that.
Or for, isn't it $750? What can you get from OnePlus?
Yeah, so OnePlus, their OnePlus 8 is officially here. It's actually starting at $700. And
okay, so you got a little $50 to spare.
$50 to spare. It's basically, I mean, the OnePlus 8 is essentially the OnePlus 7T, but with 5G. Like that's it in a nutshell. They're using the Snapdragon 865 chip, which is using the X55 for the 5G antenna bands. It will only work with the low band 5G, so T-Mobile 5G. And then they had the OnePlus 8 Pro, which is really a flagship smartphone. It's coming in at $1,000. It's competing against the Samsung Galaxy S20 and iPhone 11 Pro. I mean, it's packing incredible specs with a 120 hertz refresh rate display, the latest chipset, and all of that jazz. But I mean, they went from the never settle flagship killer to now competing in the flagship landscape. So it's kind of a change from OnePlus. They're great phones, but they're certainly more expensive. And I think the iPhone SE is just going to be super popular with a lot of people. In fact, we're already seeing it sold out in most places. So it's seeming like a win for Apple.
Yeah, I mean, for people wondering about more specs on the OnePlus 8 series, we actually did a whole bonus episode on that. You can go back. I think that was about a week and a half ago now. We didn't do one about the iPhone SE because even while that potentially is the more groundbreaking phone, because it really is Apple going into a whole new price range, it was, like you said, basically an iPhone 6 or 8 with the internals of an iPhone 11.
There's nothing new about it, but it's just a nice...
The price is what's new.
Yeah, the price is so sweet. And I guess for context, it's using the sensor of the iPhone XR, but it's using the lens of the iPhone 8. So you actually get a 28 millimeter lens as opposed to the 26 millimeter lens on the XS, XR, and 11. And then it's using that A13 Bionic. But it's not supporting night mode. You will get portrait mode though. So, I mean, it's just going to be a great phone for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, last new product we got was some lights from your company, Aperture. I know.
Woo, Gabe, this is it. Wait, this is the RC LED light bulb, right?
Well, good news and bad news. Bad news for Stetson. This is not the light bulb that you've been waiting for from them. That I think it connects via Bluetooth to each other, and you can control it, kind of like Hue lights, but basically for cinematographers.
Yeah.
This is the Aperture 300X. It is their newest flagship light, and it's the first ever bicolor point source LED light. Which, let me break that down for you. Basically, that means that where a traditional LED light uses two LED light bulbs. If it wants to be bicolor, it will use one that's tungsten, one that's daylight, and shift in between them. This one actually has one point of light source, so it has one chip that is able to do both the tungsten and the daylight, and so it can actually just shift the full thing in between. Yeah, very cool. Does 56,000 lux maximum output.
God.
Which is how. Want to explain that again, Stetson?
That's basically putting a sun in your room.
Yeah, I was hoping for a more technical explanation.
It's the level of brightness. So 1 lux is equivalent to 1 lumen, which is the equivalent of the light output of 1 candle. So, Gabe,
so 56,000 candles, basically.
Yeah, that's
incredible.
That's basically a small sun, I would say.
Yeah, and it's $1,200, which is definitely expensive, but for when you see what you're getting with this light, seems relatively inexpensive, especially if they're marketing it to. And the good news now, Stetson.
Yes, tell me,
is
Gabe.
That you might see your bulbs coming out sometimes in the future. Aperture actually tweeted out the day before they were releasing this product. They said, Tuesday may not have meant anything, but today, oh yes, today marks the first Wednesday of many when we unveil new products.
Oh, I love it.
NAB for just 5 days? Nah, we'll do it for weeks to come.
That's exciting.
So it looks like they're taking all the products they were going to release at NAB and they're spreading them out every Wednesday, I guess, for, I don't know, the first
5
maybe
weeks or something?
Yeah, or something like that. So
Sweet.
that'll keep an eye out on Aperture. Maybe go to their Twitter, get notifications from them so you can see if they release anything new. But yeah, keep an eye out for them. Stetson, you may be getting your light bulb before I get my A7S3.
I love to hear that. Let's move on to some software news. Affinity. Affinity is a software company. They make Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, and I think one more app, maybe like
Publisher or something.
Publisher, yeah, for both the iPad and Mac. So if you're an Apple customer, this could be a great software ecosystem to get your hands into.
And also, I think for Windows too.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Actually, for Windows too. And they're offering a 90-day free trial for all of their apps, as well as 50% off. So you can get each app for just $25, and this is through May 20th. So, I mean,
they don't. The big thing is they don't use a subscription model. So
yeah, so you buy it once and you own it forever. I bought these years ago, and they've been great. So, I mean, $25 is nothing considering that's like 1 month of Adobe Creative Cloud.
Yeah, it's kind of sad when you think about it.
Not to shoot them down. And other news, US Mobile, they're a cell phone carrier. They announced support for 5G plans coming in July, and they have a promo where you can try them out for 3 months, $100 for 3 months, and they're using Verizon's millimeter wave 5G. This is groundbreaking because no other carrier has access to Verizon 5G at this time. So get excited for that. And then I guess lastly, Mavic Mini. Gabe, you have Mavic Mini, right?
I do indeed.
And you did a cinema, like, what do you call those? You do like a camera
It's kind of like just showing people what you can get when you take the drone out of the box, basically.
Well, one of the problems with the Mavic Mini is that you weren't able to control the shutter speed, right? So all your motion could have been looking janky or extra sharp or just not as smooth and cinematic as you wanted, right?
That is true. I think the only way you could really do it is you could lock the exposure, but that was also, that's not really ideal.
Well, good news for you is the Mavic Mini got a software update, so you can now manually control the exposure in video, and with the use of ND filters, you can now get that proper shutter speed, so you can get super nice looking motion blurs and everything you're looking for in a flying camera.
I think that's great. I do think it's kind of an odd thing to ever put an ND filter on the Mavic Mini. It's
just like such a consumer drone, not really made for pro video, but
Yes, especially considering probably most ND filters are going to be 30, 40, $50.
Yeah, and the
But
drone's only like what, 350 or $400?
yeah, so to each their own. Speaking of drones, actually, in leaks and rumors news, we have the Mavic Air 2, which is essentially, I almost don't want to talk about the leaks, because we basically now know everything about this drone. It's being released on April 27th, which is 2 days away. That's going to be Tuesday,
Whoa, whoa.
and or one day away if you're listening
Yeah,
to it on Monday.
my watch says it's April 26th today.
Okay, then that's Monday. Sorry,
So that's
it's come
tomorrow.
around so fast.
Today?
Yeah. Yeah, the DJI website I'm just looking at, it says one day. We're recording on Sunday, so that will be it will be Monday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, I'm pretty sure. And I mean, I guess we can just call this the release of the Mavic Air right here if you're listening to the podcast. What we know about it, it's going to be $799, which is cheaper than the original Mavic Air, so that's right off the bat good news.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be one of the best consumer-focused drones. Gabe, maybe we should just save the specs and talk about it in the next
No,
episode.
I'm going through them.
You're plunging through? All right.
I'll just hit the main stuff.
All right, hit
34
us.
34 minutes flight time. That's more than the Mavic Mini, more than the Mavic Pro 2, or the 2 Zoom, whatever you want to call it, the Mavic 2. And it's going to be pretty fast, 68.4 kilometers or 42.5 miles an hour. That's about the same as the Mavic 2 models. They're slightly faster. Camera, that's the big thing. It's going to have actually the same sensor as many smartphones, the IMX586, which, do you know which smartphones this is in? I'm not quite sure.
So I
Can't
think
remember.
this is in, like, this came out in like the Mi Mix or something, right? And then Samsung put it in their Galaxy S20 lineup. I mean, it's just in so many phones right now. It's the 48 megapixel sensor that everyone is using. And
Yep.
really, I mean, the sensor is half the battle, and then the image processing is the other half. So hopefully the Mavic Air 2 also has some decent image processing to leverage those 48 megapixels.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about how many megapixels it is. I mean, we've seen it used in a lot of different smartphones, so it obviously works pretty well. But the big question is, how are they going to use all that data? And is it really going to have the low light quality and all the different good things we look for, like color science, that make this drone stand apart from just any other Chinese brand that can grab this sensor and put it in a drone?
Right. I mean,
Now,
to comment
yeah,
quickly, is like the Autel Evo 2, they had the 8K sensor and the 6K sensor, and the larger 6K sensor is actually putting out better image quality than the 8K sensor. So hopefully, I don't know, we'll see with the Mavic Air 2.
yeah, it'll be interesting. I know they're saying right now, frame rates wise, it's going to do 4K at 90 FPS.
All right, what? Isn't that more than the Pro?
Yeah, that's the thing. So DJI is great at doing this thing where they release lower end drones that actually surpass their higher end drones. And basically what they do is they get people like me to go out and buy the Mavic Air 2 because, okay, this one has slightly better battery life, slightly better, object avoidance, and, the better resolution. I buy this one, and then now probably 6 months later, they'll release the Mavic 3 Pro, which will then surpass this one. And then I'll have to buy that too.
They love it. Gabe, they
a very
love
evil
you.
plot for them to do. Anyways, the last thing I want to talk about is it is going to have Active Track 3. At least that's what we've seen. We saw a video posted online from several leakers that shows this coming close to what the Skydio 2 has of obstacle avoidance, following a biker through a narrow, like, sheltered trail with avoiding trees and stuff. It's interesting because this drone doesn't have, I think it doesn't have side obstacle avoidance, which is interesting. It only has front and back, but it must be wide angle enough that it can kind of sense it if it's going forwards.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine the drone would typically only be flying forwards, or maybe be configured to just do that, and that way it can detect obstacles and navigate around them while following the subject and keeping the camera pointed forwards.
And the last thing we'll have to know about this is that it might be hard to get because the whole COVID-19 crisis, and DJI has also, I guess, laid off a bunch of people in their North America branches. So, don't necessarily try to rush out there and get this because you might not be able to. You don't be expecting that, and possibly look maybe to get it from places like Best Buy, B&H, US manufacturers, so you can support some US businesses rather than giving all your money. If you're getting a stimulus check, for example, that $1,200 that will cover this, don't send all that money directly to China. Maybe support some of your local businesses.
Okay, I guess I know what you're doing with your stimulus check.
Yeah, right, pretty much.
Um,
And actually, we have one more thing. Quick news. I know you just got a new iMac, didn't you?
yeah,
About
I kind
a
of
couple
love
months
it.
ago.
27-inch, 5K. Beautiful.
Well, I'm glad you got the 27-inch because it looks like they're getting a new 23-inch iMac. Could come out later this year. People who know anything about iMacs are like, wait, isn't it only 21-inch and 27-inch? Well, that's correct. This one will be likely the same size as the 21-inch, but they'll get rid of all the bezels. So the
Oh
screen will
no.
actually, yeah, be larger to
No.
23-inch, which unfortunately means that probably design is also going to come to the 27-inch
I
eventually too.
know. Oh god. That's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, this is something that has been long overdue for the iMac, and for anyone out there, I love the iMac. It gives you incredible price to power ratio. This is going to be something to look into, especially if it looks better with the 23 inches and slimmer bezels. Oh, I'm going to be a little bit jealous, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh well, maybe you can give that one to me and just go buy another one. No one's that.
I love that. I think should we head into the Go review? Should we go
Yeah, let's
there?
go into Go Review. This is our weekly segment now where we take turns reviewing something and also asking the other to review something. So, in the last episode, I reviewed meal services and like meal delivery services like HelloFresh, Blue Apron, and then I asked Stetson, "Hey Stetson, can you review the Galaxy S20, that new smartphone, flagship smartphone from Samsung that came out I think now about a month and a half, 2 months ago?" But, many people might now be thinking, hey, maybe it's time to get it because I don't really like what OnePlus has. So let's see what the S20 does.
Yeah, so great introduction. I've been using the S20 basically since it came out. Pre-ordered the S20 Plus, and then actually ended up getting an S20 as well. And I think to kind of compress this review, when you think of a smartphone, you've got, I want to say, like 5 or 6 pillars. You've got display, battery, camera, build quality, performance, software, and price, something like that. And I guess, like, let's start with display. So Samsung is known for their quite incredible displays in smartphones. Gabe, would you agree with that? Like, when you think of Android displays, what manufacturer comes to mind?
Yeah, Samsung is definitely up there. I'm trying to think. I mean, I do like Pixels, just their colors of their whole UI makes their screens look really nice, but they're technically not the best screens. Yeah, Samsung, I would say their AMOLED screens have been pretty much industry defining and, setting the pace for the past, several years.
Yeah, and they're used by other camera companies too. I think Apple actually uses Samsung panels, or Samsung is manufacturing the panels in their iPhone.
And
So
also tablets and computers, a
for
lot of them.
for the S20, I mean, it's great. It's vibrant. It's colorful. It's very saturated. And the thing that stood out to me is actually it wasn't as bright as my iPhone 10s or even the OnePlus 8. And then, as you mentioned, kind of with color accuracy, I don't think it's the most accurate panel. Like pulling it side by side with the OnePlus 8 here, and just a basic color like white looks so much better on the OnePlus 8, which did get that CNDC rating of zero point 0.4. So OnePlus put a lot of effort into the color accuracy. Samsung is vibrant, colorful, and looks great by itself. But sometimes when you compare it with other phones, my opinion is just not. It's not as accurate to some degree. And
Is spec wise, is it a quad HD or full 4K?
yeah, so this is
Or
where it gets kind of weird, I should say. If you go into the display settings, you have the option to increase the resolution or increase the frame rate. But as of right now, you can't do both. So let me quickly pull up the resolution options. You can do HD, full HD plus, which is 2400 by 1080. This is the resolution it comes in out of the box. Or you can do the full display resolution, which is Quad HD plus. Basically, it's 1440p at 3200 pixels high. But you can't do the 1440p and the 120 hertz refresh rate, which is like one of the key features of this smartphone is that incredibly fast, super smooth 120 hertz display.
I
So,
wonder if they had maybe overheating features or it just completely nuked the battery.
I mean, that's another thing. The battery life hasn't been like with the screen brightness turned all the way up because I've been filming this device a lot and doing 5G speed tests, which I'm sure is exactly what Samsung wanted. But my battery life, because of that, hasn't been great. But I will say, like, the higher refresh rate display is so noticeable. It makes everything feel faster, smoother. Yeah, I think if you're looking for a new smartphone, I would say higher refresh rate display, get a camera setup that includes at least a wide angle camera, and consider 5G. And the S20 definitely delivers on all three of those.
Have you noticed a big difference going back and forth between like your iPhones, which are the slower refresh rate, and the new phones?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the iPhone is just like a consistently smooth experience. Where I will say some of the animations on the Samsung device are actually kind of slow and chunky. Like something as simple as opening a folder, for example, doesn't quite have the same snappiness that you have on other devices. So the screen is beautiful, but because of some of the UI settings, it's just not as responsive to some degree. So it is noticeable, but it's also like you get used to it. I don't know. It's not a defining feature for me. It'd be nice to have on the iPhone though. So Apple, if you can
Yeah.
pull that off, I would love to
Well,
see it.
well, the big thing with the S20 is obviously those cameras, right? That they put on the back.
Yeah, so Gabe, I actually took some sample photos, and
Okay.
by all means, you're welcome to come into the dock with me.
Okay.
What I will
So let
say
me
about the
open it up.
cameras,
Yeah.
I love the options because you've got three cameras on the back. You have a 48 megapixel, no, a 64 megapixel, excuse me,
Yeah.
telephoto lens. You've got, actually, I don't know if that one's the telephoto.
I think that's the regular one.
The regular, yeah, I think you're right. That's the regular one. And so you have the 64 megapixel wide angle, you have an ultra wide angle, and you have a 3 times telephoto. And like they take good images, but also not great. And they also have a front facing camera. So I did some front facing selfies. And what I learned is Samsung actually has beauty mode turned on by default. So looking at these images here, you can see my face is brightened up quite a bit. And then the
Oh
software just
yeah.
tries to like, I guess, alter the background to preserve the dynamic range. But I don't know. How do you think these look? Are they too processed? Are they over processed? Do they look good?
There. The top one has the beauty mode. Then I'm looking at there's 3 photos. Yeah, they. I think they look pretty good as far as like if I was taking photos professionally. No, I wouldn't want these. But if you're just sending photos to like a friend and you want to take a quick selfie or quick selfie of your friends to post online, it's nice because it's we talked about this before. Like how much editing do you want going on in your smartphone as you take the photo? And if it's just stuff for fun posting, it's kind of nice to have that happening automatically behind the scenes because then you don't have to do as much editing before you actually post it.
Gabe, yeah, that's a great point. Like, if you're more casual about it, taking a photo and having it look nice right off the camera roll is great because you can slap it on social and it'll look awesome. And actually, Samsung's cameras are kind of known for being bright, vibrant, and saturated and looking good. Maybe not technically accurate or precise, but in general, looking quite good off of the camera. So I think the selfie, it's okay. It's kind of processed, in my opinion. I would have liked it if the beauty mode was turned off by default. But you can obviously go in and change that. And what I thought was really nice is if you look at the images here, Gabe, there's two that are side by side, and Samsung actually built in a wider angle lens to the selfie camera. So if you're taking a picture with multiple people, you can pop a button and the camera will zoom out and be a little bit wider. Otherwise, it is punched in a little bit.
Huh.
So it looks like a nice normal selfie. But
I was going to say actually correction to us. The 64 megapixel is actually the telephoto. It's a 12 megapixel for the wide and a 12
okay, that
megapixel
makes
for the
so much
ultra wide.
sense.
Yeah.
It was, oh man. All right, cool. So, but what's interesting then is the 64 megapixel is the telephoto, but it's
Yeah.
actually a wide angle lens that is just being cropped in on.
Oh really? Wow.
Yeah, so you can go into the 64 megapixel camera mode, and it's actually a wide angle photo. So that means for the
Gotcha.
telephoto, they're just cropping in on all those pixels because they can do that.
Okay,
But yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
what I noticed is we scroll down to the next page. I was comparing the 12.2 megapixel camera versus the 64 megapixel shooting mode. And the 12 megapixel camera mode, it actually had much higher dynamic range because the camera did a lot more editing to the photo. It could do it because there was less data it had to process. But when you went into the 64 megapixel mode, suddenly it was just crammed with information and to some degree a lot of detail, but it just wasn't as processed. So Gabe,
Yeah,
like,
there's well, I don't even know if that's processing or not. If that's just it can't record as much data per pixel, possibly.
oh, that's an interesting insight. But I mean, what do you
Yeah.
think? I noticed looking at these that the 12 megapixel photos are more saturated, have greater dynamic range, and I guess they're a little bit less detailed to some degree. But I think they also look nicer because they have that extra saturation boost. What do you think of these?
Yeah, I'm looking at the sharpness zoomed in. It's definitely more sharpness on the 64 megapixel ones, but it's not that much more. And I also would the thing that's kind of true is I would increase the exposure on the 12 megapixel ones because they kind of, even though they have greater dynamic range, usually you want them to brighten them up a little bit. However, I like that they still have a lot of the data. And for example, there's in the photos that you have, there's the sky that's a bluish sky, and one in the one with the 64 megapixel camera, it's completely white and blown out. So even though you could edit on the 12 megapixel one, you could brighten up that sky. You'd at least still have the color values there originally if you wanted to bring that color back in with a slightly brighter sky. Whereas with the 64 megapixel one, that data is not even there to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's a great. So, and the other thing is when you're shooting in the 64 megapixel mode, the images are huge. You're looking at 16 megabytes to 32 megabytes
Jeez,
per
that is
image,
insane.
right? Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's using the HEIC codec, so it's just JPEG. And yeah, I mean, I think for the average person, just stick with the 12 megapixel mode. Like, it's not a very useful feature in my opinion. But you can zoom in up to 30 times. So I don't know. Just Gabe, what do you think of these zoom photos towards the bottom of the document? I did a fire hydrant and I did a squirrel. Are these like usable or
So
good?
this is 30x a zoom.
30x, 30
Jeez.
times.
It's using not only just cropping in, but then it's doing digital cropping, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of cropping.
Where it's upscaling the
Oh god,
pixels.
I don't even think I can look at these. They're like
Yeah,
blurry
they're
art.
they're they're pretty bad. I mean, this is why I usually say if your camera phone, just use the max optical zoom it has, take the photo, and then crop it in post tends to be the best thing to do. If yeah, I mean, if you really need to zoom in and use that 30x, or I know the Ultra has, I mean, the top of the line one has the 100x zoom, right? That's even
Yeah, the
worse.
space zoom.
Yeah,
It's
but
nuts.
I mean, I would never use it, but it's good to have in a pinch.
Just get closer
Ultimately,
to
I
your
I'm
subject.
very I do think these photos are really good. I think Apple tends to have more reliable cameras from generation to generation, but Samsung, I feel like this one they did a pretty good job. There's definitely some shortcomings with their cameras, but you can get some really good images out of them.
I agree. I think the thing with Samsung is they have good cameras, but they do a lot of image processing. And I think for most people, that's going to be fine. Like the extra saturation, the vibrancy, it looks great. Whereas if you're more into professional photography, the more balanced tones in iPhones can be more desirable for some situations. But overall, I think you're going to love this phone. It's got pretty good camera, top of the line build quality. Performance was super snappy with the Snapdragon 865 and 5G performance. And the 120 hertz made everything feel fluid and fast and responsive, and I loved it. Software, this is actually an interesting point where I feel when we have all of these glass sandwich phones, the software is what sets it apart. And the Samsung flavor isn't my favorite. Like, I actually prefer the clean uh, design of the OnePlus 8 software.
Or the
So,
Pixel.
yeah, or even the Google Pixel. Like, I prefer those phones because of the software. And lastly, price. These phones start at $1,000, which is expensive. The Ultra, $1,400. Could you imagine spending that on a phone, Gabe?
That's, I mean, you can spend that on, for example, an iPhone. I think iPhone 11 Pro, you'd have to go to the second tier up, which is 256 gigabytes, right?
Yeah.
And with the OnePlus, they don't even have a phone in that price range. Yeah, so it's pretty much, yeah, that's crazy that it would start at 1400. I mean, you're seeing Samsung go premium more and more and blowing past premium with the Fold and the Z Flip. So I guess that's the market they want to get into. Maybe we'll see them drop the prices down as well. Actually, they already did
Yeah, they, they
a
did. It's
good
funny you
amount.
bring that up.
But also, I was going to say, as we get to different generations, the thing is basically they always try to push the specs. So they're always putting cutting edge components in there, which cost a lot of money to manufacture. But then as more companies start using those and release flagship phones that have them, then the price drops down.
Yeah, as the manufactured parts reach scale.
Yep.
So I guess overall, it's a good phone. If you like Samsung, I think you're going to love this one. It's expensive. So you may actually consider going with their Galaxy A51 or A71 series for a better value.
Which they just made those available in North America.
Yeah, so I would check those out. But it's
the last
good.
thing I want to ask. You have the S10, right? Or had the S10? I don't know.
I do have the S10.
Do you think this is a worthwhile upgrade for someone who has the S10?
I do not. I think the S10 is a strong device. I would hold on until next year. I think you're going to get just a better generational leap. I mean, like the S10 also has good cameras, good performance, good design, and you're not really, the only thing you're getting really is 5G and a slightly tweaked design.
And the refresh rate, or no, they're the same?
I mean, the refresh rate is improved because you're going from 60 hertz to 120 hertz. I just don't like, I wouldn't spend $1,000 to upgrade right now. I think it's like wait a year and then upgrade, and you're just going to get that much better of a phone. So that's my take.
Seems like good advice.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking of possibly upgrading, and oh wait, before we even segue into the main topic,
you gotta assign me on.
Let's get a record scratch going.
I'm like a rocket ready to launch at the next Go review. You gotta point me in the right way.
I had so many ideas for this one, Gabe, and I just all right. Here we go. I'm gonna give you two options. Option number one. Google Stadia. You can take a stab.
Right, I forgot to mention that I gave you that option before for last week, and you gave it to me for the previous week. So this is
the continuing third week of Google Stadia.
There's a chance you might get a review for Google Stadia in our next episode. Or
I'm going to give you a second option.
Okay.
And again, a lot of ideas here.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go Apple TV Plus. It seems like everyone's kind of at home. There's a bunch of different services available. So I'm going to say Apple TV Plus. What your
do you want me to do a comparison?
Yeah,
between
actually,
like that and other ones?
Now that I'm speaking this out loud, that would be really great. Maybe Apple TV Plus, Hulu, Netflix. Maybe,
yeah, because a lot of people already are getting Apple TV Plus for free. So
I think that's a great idea. I love that. All right, yeah. So those
are
the options.
I mean, I'm definitely thinking Google Stadia is up there for review potential, but we'll have to wait and see until next week.
Oh man, I'm excited to tune back in and see what you review.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're gonna. I hope you're gonna be there to record the episode with me.
Yes,
right?
I'm. I'll just be listening the whole time. All right, here Gabe goes.
Waiting to listen to it on Monday. I'm like, Stetson, I need you to record this episode with me first.
Stetson, are you there? Are you there? Are you saying anything? Are you there? Gabe, I'm just waiting for the Go review. Just what did you review? Audience, tune in with us next 2 weeks, whenever that happens. And
but we might do a bonus episode for the.
Yeah. Oh, I am excited about that. Oh, so many things to get excited about. New cameras, new drones, new tech. Speaking of new cameras, Gabe, what's your dream camera?
Well, it's funny you should mention it. I actually had a nightmare last
night. A nightmare camera?
About my worst camera.
Oh my God. This is the Canon, what do they call that? The clip-on Canon camera?
And actually, no, that could be the Ivy Rec Mini. No, but actually, my nightmare camera would be a camera that has 8K video potentially. So
wait, whoa, Gabe.
Yeah.
What? Why is that your nightmare camera?
I have to say, even though I'm excited about the EOS R5 and this big step up we're seeing in mirrorless and DSLR cameras from 4K being the norm to 6K, potentially 8K, I'm a little worried because I think that resolution isn't everything. I mentioned back when we were talking about the C300 and stuff about how, you were saying that, resolution isn't everything and that oftentimes it's better to have better color science, better bit rate, stuff like that. And I totally agree because I actually think a great video to watch is this. If you don't know Potato Jet, he's this YouTuber, does awesome reviews of cameras, incorporating cinematography into it.
We're gonna listen to that backwards and be like, "Oh, yep."
That word has too many slight variations for me. But the point is, yes, check him out if you haven't already. Specifically, his video on the C500 Mark II versus the Canon EOS R. And I think this is a great video to illustrate. I mean, the cameras are no comparison. One's $15,000, one's like $3,200, or
and probably potentially less with the discounts.
Yeah. So no comparison in that sense. But what he does is he went with both cameras, recorded 1920 by 1080p video. And so you're thinking, all right, same video resolution, right? No difference there, but it's what you're getting is incredibly different sensors, different processors, and different potentially recording formats. And it's ridiculous the difference in
What?
sharpness you're getting. Yes, right. You wouldn't think
Really?
sharpness
For
Yes.
1080p?
Right? Yeah, that's incredible. Like
Stop.
true color is different.
Stop the
dynamic
podcast.
range-
I'm watching this now.
I know. No, we're
No,
gonna watch it
I'm
after.
kidding.
Take my
I'll
word
be
for it.
watching this immediately after because I'm very intrigued by that.
It really changes your whole view on how important resolution necessarily is because
So
he crops in like 4 times on this, right? And the Canon EOS R footage looks like absolute crap. Looks like a painting done with watercolor brushes. Whereas the one shot on the C500 Mark II looks like it could have been 8K footage cropped in. Like it's still perfectly, like you can see every detail and it's just mind-blowing.
Well, hang on, wait a minute. How does this have to do with resolution or the color science? Like, does the higher end camera have a higher megapixel sensor, or like what was causing
no,
this
it
bigger
doesn't.
difference?
It doesn't have a higher megapixel sensor. If anything, it probably has a lower megapixel sensor. But even if it has the same, sensor resolution, it's all really about the stuff that the camera is doing behind the scenes. So potentially, what codec it's using. Is it recording RAW? Is it recording, log formats? Potentially, how much is it compressing the video? What is it doing, like HDR wise? And also the big thing we're seeing more and more is color science. Is it doing, 444, 422, 424? Basically, how much information is it packing into each frame versus not how big the frame is, right?
That makes a lot of sense.
Like think of it like a 3D shape, like a box, right? And the frame is just how the dimensions of the box as far as length and width. And the depth is how, they call it bit rate or bit depth. That's how much info is in that box. So yeah, you can have 8K frame, but if the box is only 2 inches deep, that's not that big of a box. You can't fit much in it.
Right, so you want a very deep box. You get a lot of data in the. I'm saying data. I feel like it should be data, but a lot of data in
Either
those
or
frames. That makes a lot of. So what? I mean, do you have an ideal like? What do you want a camera to be recording in? Do you want 422, 444?
I mean, 444 is like that's incredible if we could do that. But for a consumer video camera, DSLR mirrorless, 422 would be really great. But I really think that 4K I'm okay with that for now. Yeah, 6K is okay. That sounds really cool and stuff. But I mean, for you personally, 4K footage, when I'm editing it, especially a long video, my computer's starting to hate me if I get too long or, too many effects going on top of that.
I have to say my iMac is actually handling it quite well. So
okay, well, but upping that to 6K, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely bringing up a really good point where all of a sudden these higher resolution files are not only larger, taking up more space on your hard drive, and are more intensive to process, but they can just slow down and bog down the editing process. And that in turn can make it more challenging to create your video in a time efficient manner. So you kind of bring up a good point where you want to strike a compromise between the image quality and then what your computer can handle.
Yeah. And, I mean, they're always going to push resolution and specs because that's what a lot of people look at. Oh, good.
Well, it's so easy to compare those.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Where it's a lot harder to, analyze color, oh, this one's more color accurate, especially, when you're going into the post processing and how much you can tweak colors and stuff. So I think, for me, that's right off the bat. I would like to see less focus on the resolutions. I mean, the Mavic Air 2, is only going to be doing 4K, potentially 6K. We'll see. But, we had that Autel Evo, the 8K one, and the S20 Plus or Ultra that was doing 8K, and it's not very good video quality.
I mean, I think the case in point is almost what we talked about at the beginning of this podcast with the Canon C300 Mark III and the EOS R5, where the C300 has a 12 megapixel sensor, I think, or something,
Yeah.
or maybe, yeah.
Yeah, the R5 is going to have a, I think 500 or no, 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 500,
Whoa.
45 megapixel sensor. Sorry.
Yeah, it's got to have something huge to even support the 8K resolution. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's clear based on the price points and the target demographics that the C300 will potentially undoubtedly deliver the better image. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think more emphasis should be put on color. I think it can be more
Well,
challenging.
color and the bit rate as far as like and dynamic range, stuff like that. Basically how the video, the depth of the file versus just the size
I think that can be
of
challenging
the
to
frame.
compare. I mean, for consumers and on a spec sheet. But you're definitely
Oh,
right.
it definitely can. You're true there. What would you like to see
I mean,
more in future
honestly,
cameras?
my dream, so I film a lot of phones, and actually the higher resolution is so beneficial because I can crop in on the screen. And that allows me to like get two shots or two framings of one shot or one scene with just one recording. Or I can punch in and get extra detail on the phone. And
But
that's really helpful.
if you're cropping into garbage,
Yeah,
you know,
I
you
guess it's true. If it's garbage in, it's garbage out. So
yeah.
I would love to see your color depth. I think 4K is my minimum. Like getting that 4K resolution with the same color, bitrate, and depth that's huge. Like that's in a dream camera. I would be okay to 6K, but now that you mentioned the editing slowdown and the larger file size, maybe 4K is just that sweet spot. But for me, the other big thing is a flip out screen. Gabe, what do you think of that? Do you need a flip out screen? I mean, I haven't been using one for a couple years, and I don't think you've been using one for years
Well,
anyway.
I've
But like,
actually the P950, the Coolpix Nikon super zoom camera. It's the $800 camera with 2000 millimeter zoom, kind of a Frankenstein sort of camera. It actually does have a flip out screen, and I've had to, as I've been comparing it to another super zoom similar camera from Panasonic, which has a touchscreen but no flip out screen. I've had to be like, which one is better? Because I wish ideally probably you could have both, but
you
it
can't
comes to a
have
point.
both.
Yeah, well, you can, but it comes to a point where a lot of manufacturers try to go one or the other because they both cost money to do that feature, so they don't want to put both and jack up the price. I really think a touchscreen is oftentimes better. I know a flip out screen is really great, but I don't know. I go back and forth. It depends really on your uses, but I often find a touchscreen is so much easier to get quickly through the controls you want. Whereas, going traditional buttons, click, 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 click takes forever. However, yeah, getting a shot low to the ground and having to just, all right, now I got to lie on the ground
To get
because I
that
can't
shot.
just, yeah, is a game changer too to have
Okay,
that
well,
flip up
I'm
screen.
gonna I'm gonna say that's a valid point, but I'm also gonna override it. Like just boom.
Okay,
Uh,
well, glad I
the
was
Canon
talking for the last
90D
30
has a
seconds.
touchscreen and a flip out screen, so it's awesome. So my question to you is take something like the A6600 or yeah, the A6600 compared with something like the EOS R5, which is going to have that flip out sideways screen versus a flip up screen. Which one of those would you prefer in your dream camera?
I think I'd probably have the flip out. It just offers more options. But again, if I can get a better touchscreen, that was one thing I was thinking and I had put in my list. We use smartphones all the time. They have really great touchscreens.
Oh
So we've
yeah.
kind of gotten used to them.
Wait,
Why can't we get something that quality in a camera?
dream camera, just take an iPhone, make that the back display. That's it. That's your
Yeah, just hook
interface.
it in,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
That would be pretty cool.
That would be
I would also,
incredible.
I think they could take a lot of notes from smartphones. I don't want cameras to become like smartphones
This is so
'cause-
true. Like
but
bigger sensor, please. Don't do
yes.
the 100 times zoom. But definitely take the UI elements, like being able to
Well,
tap
yeah,
set.
UI, touchscreen, also multiple sensors. And I mean this in a couple ways.
Whoa.
Doing accelerometers or gyroscopes for better which I think a lot of them have that already for the, in-body stabilization.
Sure.
But also I think having that along with additional image sensors so they can do kind of the, what portrait mode does, right? With it uses parallax between two sensors to be able to, kind of sense where objects are in space,
Well,
basically.
Gabe, isn't
You
that what the lens is supposed to do? Like you shouldn't need another sensor to do that, right?
to do what?
To do portrait mode.
No, but not to do portrait mode, I was saying, but just to use two different. If you have, for example, your main sensor that the camera that you shoot through, but then an additional sensor that's able to basically because it's separated from the main sensor. It can do what your eyes do, which is tell the distance from stuff. And that would enable a lot of like 3D tracking in space. So potentially you could, do real time effects in camera with, placing objects in the scene like AR stuff.
Oh wow. So you're
Or even record the depth data and, tracking data. So you could easily just import the whole file into like Adobe After Effects and drop effects in without having to do a bunch of, depth tracking and stuff like that.
I think we'd have to reimagine the camera body design to pull that off. Um,
Potentially, yes, that's true.
I mean, you mentioned IBIS. I would love that in my camera as well. And I think along with depth tracking and other tracking technology, object tracking for focus, I love Canon's dual pixel autofocus as well. And then face and eye detection. I want this to work in all camera modes with all settings. But I think I just want to jump into like the future where, all right, let's say we take your depth sensor and your camera, we package that in a 360 camera, and then you just use that as your main camera in your studio. So all of a sudden, like I do a slider shot of a phone, right? Phone's on desk, slider, camera slides from one side to the other and keeps the phone in the center of the frame. What if the camera just recorded everything, got the depth data of the phone, and in post production, I could just key in, frame it up, lock it on the phone, track that, and then add the background blur. How cool would that be?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly kind of what I think that I've been saying for a while. 360 cameras are the way of the future. They basically, in a camera form without having a gimbal, they allow you to get X and Y axis stabilization. So you can do, you can move a 360 camera from one side to another of an object and then go in post and track that and keep that object perfectly centered in the frame like you were using a gimbal to lock on it and circle around it.
That's incredible. Yeah, I would love that. And then something interesting is that it wasn't a prom, but like it was the formal dance at Ithaca. They had like a bullet time effect where they had a row of cameras all lined up, and they would take an image from the leftmost camera all the way to the rightmost camera, stitch those images together in a GIF that would slide back and forth, and it looked almost 3D. But I think
Yeah.
if you moved a 360 camera fast enough, you could pull off the same effect.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, that has the bullet time for the Insta360 cameras. They have this kind of wand that you spin around over your head, and it goes at like I think 200 frames per second. You slow it down. It looks super cool, kind of like that. It's hard to do that. The reason why that looks 3D, you have a bunch of cameras taking photos at the same time, and then it can move from side to side, and it kind of that's the impression of 3D it gives is because it's frozen action oftentimes and it's moving around. I don't think you could do that with one camera
Yeah, that's
because
probably true.
it'd have to be moving really, really fast. Is the
Either
thing.
really, really fast, or you just have to be very still for the effect to be
Yes,
pulled off
potentially.
appropriately.
But going back to, I was talking about how smartphones they should incorporate some features from there. We don't have any 360 cameras in smartphones, so
Well, you
that's
can
not really.
get accessories
Yeah, you can get
for the
accessories you
essential
plug
phone.
in.
They had a 360 camera accessory. It was kind of a disaster.
But
Yeah,
one thing I'd like to see though is with a lot of people now live streaming or video chatting from usually with their laptop cameras, which are awful. Maybe with a smartphone camera, slightly better. But if you have a DSLR lying around, it'd be really nice if there was a way to put that up through Wi-Fi. Just hook up from the camera. All these cameras have Wi-Fi built in. Why can't you have a way? I know GoPros have it, where you can live stream to YouTube, Facebook, or even what is it, RTTSP or something? I don't know, like file sharing type thing, and you can use it to do like a multicam setup all over Wi-Fi. That would be
Oh,
really cool.
the cameras would just drain their batteries. It would absolutely die. But that's a
I
really
mean,
good point.
yeah, you'd definitely plug your cameras in, but like, wouldn't it be great if you could have, for example, like two Sony cameras or two Canon cameras set up, two different angles, and then have your smartphone or tablet there on the desk and running from maybe I don't know, maybe it's the Canon app or maybe it's a different app, and being like switching angles back and forth, like
That would be nuts. You would
that'd be
need
so cool.
huge bandwidth to be able to handle all of that data transfer, though.
Well, not necessarily
You
because
don't think so?
it basically would just require the cameras companies working on making a specialized codec or some sort of way to reduce the file size, compress it a bunch just for this mode, so that I could easily transfer at low latency off the camera.
I like that. It's interesting to bring that up because I think the DJI drones can actually live stream to YouTube and Facebook.
Yep, they can.
That's
And
nuts.
well, like I said, GoPros can do it.
But just
So
imagine a flying drone
possible.
while you're like gaming. It's like flying around you, getting all the different angles.
I've used the DJI live stream. It works pretty well, honestly, and which is incredible if you're thinking that this is not just going directly from the drone to online YouTube, but it's actually going from the drone to your controller, then through the cable into your smartphone, and then from your smartphone online.
I guess if DJI can do it, other camera companies can do it. But I think they'd want to see that as a priority or like a real use
Well,
case.
I would say the cop out that DJI is taking is they're going from the they're using your smartphone really to transmit it online,
Right.
and they just have their OcuSync link to the drone is just giving the video because it always does.
Sure. I
But
mean, that's an interesting idea, and I kind of like it. I want to jump back to just like storage because you
yeah,
mentioned getting a lot of a high bit rate in your video cameras. That'd be amazing, incredible for the image quality. What
yes,
do you want to
definitely.
use to store all of this data on?
I mean, I personally love SD cards.
Oh yeah,
I
you
like
like them a little bit.
I l-
Do you have
I
how many
have a
do you
lot of
have?
them. I have a lot of them. They're small. They're they're portable. You can have I can have a pack of 20 of them, and it fits in a wallet.
Okay,
That's what I
that's a
like.
very valid point. I respect that. Well, what do you think of something like the Blackmagic Pocket Camera that can record directly to an SSD?
I mean, it's a great use because it's SSDs. People don't know solid state drives. They're super high transfer rates. They're not a hard drive, so they don't have to worry about a disk, and they're pretty compact. Not as compact as a SD card, but the thing is, they're very, very expensive.
Are they more expensive than SD cards for the same storage
Oh,
amount?
ridiculously more expensive. You can get an SD card that's one of the fastest out there for SD cards at 256 gigabytes, and that's maybe $60 tops. I think it might be even cheaper. SSDs, if you want to get a fast, an SSD to record with, the Blackmagic or something like that, you're going to be looking at 300 minimum.
You think so? No.
Yeah.
I can get a
Yes.
terabyte for $115 right now
From where?
from B&H. Crucial 1 terabyte internal SATA SSD.
But is that compatible with
Oh, I
Blackmagic?
guess
That's the thing.
you'd have to get a
Camera
T5,
companies
but you can get
camera
a
companies have these. Also, they're only compatible with certain brands, just like your camera is only compatible
that
with
is
certain
so
SD card
sneaky.
brands. So, and also the thing is, those cameras are also putting out a lot more. So, a 1 terabyte sounds big, but for those cameras that have SSD compatibility, usually they're putting out a lot bigger files. So, 1 terabyte often isn't that big of a storage space.
I don't know. I think
So I understand your want there, but I really like having the ability to have cheap storage like an SD card because it's used by so many people. They're able to mass produce them. I think we will see that with stuff like maybe CF Express cards as they get used in like the Canon EOS R5 and maybe eventually SSDs, but they really need to come down in size, I think.
I can understand that for sure. I'm struggling to find a comparable device here because the 1 terabyte, they make 1 terabyte micro SD cards. That's mind-blowing to me, but those are really expensive. I don't know. I'm kind of up in the air. I like the portability of the SD cards, but the extra space and being able to record directly to an SSD and then just plug that into your computer and be good to go. That seems really nice. It seems like a very convenient feature to me.
I guess we'll have to go back and forth on that one, but
I
I
mean,
personally
cameras will not be using SD or
let's just say I just looked up SSD here, Angel Bird the SSD Mini, which is the ones that they use in like the Ninja recorders. It's $199 for 500 gigabytes.
that's expensive.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I guess it
and it's
depends.
super fast, but it's also it's pretty big. Like I think they need to make maybe a new card type or something. Maybe it's the CF Express. There's other ones out there. Something that because I don't like having the USB C to plug into the camera itself. I want it just to slot into a thing that keeps it held well and automatically has the pins built in.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess it's similar in price. You can get an external SanDisk SSD for $72, or you can get a SD memory card for $70. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, are there any other aspects you'd want to have in your dream camera?
I don't know, not many.
It sounds like just
Really,
image quality
the,
is the
the only
most
other thing,
important.
I guess, going back to smartphones, we talk, stuff I want to see from smartphones. The last thing I guess would be, I love how smartphones are kind of able to integrate with other devices. Well, sometimes it's painful, but getting it's been slowly trending towards it's very seamless. You can connect to a GoPro camera, connect to your Fitbit watch, connect to your Apple Watch, connect to your headphones, right? Just kind of acts as this hub that you can connect to other devices to. And that would be really cool if smartphones features of being able to do that so easily could be passed on to cameras. Mainly, I'm thinking I've often expressed the need for gimbals and cameras to communicate better together. That would be really great if they could do that and possibly transfer the image to the gimbal so the gimbal can use it for tracking and stuff like that, or a bunch of different things I think could be helpful. But camera companies opening up the camera, the back end, and maybe some software, or basically just offering ways to integrate better with accessories would be really good.
That's a great point. I mean, I know one of the common problems we have is that the internal image stabilization, the IBIS on the camera, along with the image stabilization on the lens, can actually look really weird with the stabilization on the gimbal. When if everything was working together harmoniously, I feel like you could get
Yeah.
much smoother footage that didn't look as distorted, wobbly, or janky. So that's a great point. And I think going off of that, like I just want every camera manufacturer to have a clean, fast, responsive app that I can use to control my camera and see the image. That's my dream. I would love that. And some are much better than others. Like Panasonic, they have their app locked down. Sony, I can't really say the same thing for.
Sony's better. I thought Sony was bad too for a while. Then I used Nikon's app and I went, wow, Sony's is actually pretty good.
Wow.
There's just, yeah, the real thing for me is the connectivity, because I'm often, taking pictures and quickly connecting to my camera, then connecting to Wi-Fi to share the photos and going back,
Yeah.
doing a lot of that swapping in between, especially if I have multiple cameras and connecting to one camera, connecting to another camera. Big thing is how easily does it connect to Wi-Fi, like to the camera's Wi-Fi, and then disengage from it. And some are just so painful where I have to restart the camera, turn off Wi-Fi, go through this whole rigmarole. Whereas GoPro, I think, has knocked it out of the park. Their cameras use low energy Bluetooth. You connect to them, then that turns on Wi-Fi. You hit join that Wi-Fi, and boom, you're in about 15 seconds or so.
I love that. And I think the other thing too is if you're a social media influencer, like being able to pull the image off the camera to your smartphone, quickly edit it in Adobe Lightroom on the go, and then share it to Instagram, that's just so much more of an efficient workflow than plugging it into your computer, importing all the photos, like going through each one, airdropping it back to your phone, and then sharing it on Instagram. I think the integration and the process for some of these workflows, whether you're streaming, you're sharing photos on social media platforms, or you're doing other workflows, I think the interconnectedness could be significantly improved. Yeah, I mean,
Though
yeah.
one thing is I don't want to see. I know the A7S2 had apps
Wait,
that you
what?
had to buy. Yes,
Whoa.
this was really horrible. So the A7S2 didn't actually have a time lapse feature built in.
Wait, stop. No,
Yes,
Gabe,
no, I'm
no.
not kidding. I'm not making this up. Instead, you had to buy a 999 app on the Sony store, and then I forget how you got it onto the device itself, but somehow you got it onto the to this camera, and then that was the app you'd then have to open to then use to do a time lapse. It was, yeah. So
That's
I don't want that. I still want it all.
That's
I
great.
want it to all be one. Like I want it to all be Apple's walled garden, in the sense that you don't have apps that you have to use from, all right, you have to download this app and this app. I want it to all be features that are built into the camera, and built into the the main operating system. But I still want to have that openness and potential to integrate with other platforms.
Speaking of apps, I'd also love just the software updates of the camera and like the
Oh, to
software.
be
Yeah, it'd
easier,
be easy.
right?
Like it should be like downloading an app. It should
Not
be.
not not download to your SD card or download to your computer and then connect it to your
Yeah, and
computer.
you get this scary message like, "Do not turn off the camera while it's updating.
Yeah.
Close all apps. Open on your
I
computer."
still haven't been able to update my A7 III yet. I've tried multiple times and every time it fails.
My goodness, I think I've actually updated mine recently because we were talking about it, and
Yeah.
that's yeah. I mean, it just should be so much easier. I don't know what the camera manufacturers are doing. They're making it too challenging on us. All right, so if you were
Yeah.
to build your dream camera, what like pick different cameras out there, like pick the Wi-Fi capabilities of the GoPro, the image sensor of some other camera. What would you bring together to build your
Okay.
dream camera?
Um yeah, definitely you nailed the Wi-Fi capabilities with GoPro. They're really doing it right. Also their app probably too. Really well done. Maybe DJI's app too as well. I kind of
They
like
have
their
surprisingly good apps. I want to give them
yeah.
credit for that.
I would do the image sensor probably of well, I mean, I'll say the A7S III because that's the rumored one out there. But I wouldn't want a super high res image sensor. The 24 megapixels I have on the A7 III is pretty good, and I probably wouldn't go much above that. Some people, if you're into, taking photos, you might want a higher res one, but I think being able to have that slightly lower res sensor, not really wanting to do 8K, I'll go with 6K. That's fine. It gives you the ability to crop in a little bit and still get 4K. But doing high res, yeah, 6K, that's good. And then high bit rate, doing some nice high frame rates at 4K. So the 4K 120 at the R5, that's something that's particularly exciting to me. I would want the flip out screen from Canon. I'll give you that. But I would want that touch screen. So
Wait,
if they
Canon
had to
Canon
go,
has touchscreens.
I know they do. But I'm just saying, I would if the camera company had to go, oh, we can do a cheaper flip out like the Sony flip out style, or just flips
Game,
up.
gotta
If
dream
we need a
bigger,
touch
dream
screen,
bigger. It does
okay,
everything.
dream bigger. I would want to. Actually, I want a screen that folds out like the Sony or like the Canon one, but then is actually a Samsung Fold, so it flips up to be like an 8-inch display.
Oh my
That would be
god.
cool.
Wait, could you imagine? What if it's just a small folding phone, or not folding phone, but folding screen on the back of the camera? So instead of like you flip it out, it unfolds out, either top or bottom, and then
That
suddenly
could work.
you have a 6-inch display instead of a 3-inch display.
Well, I think it would need to. I don't know. We'll figure that out later once we
Yeah, that's for
produce.
the engineers to figure out.
But that could be actually a cool use of a actual folding display. I would want. I do kind of want to see some integration of touch screen or touch sensitive controls, possibly. I don't know. I have not quite set on that, but maybe even haptic feedback would be an interesting
Ooh.
thing to see included with cameras, especially like to show that if you're doing manual focus, it would let you know when you're hitting focus with
Oh my
haptic
god,
feedback.
that's so brilliant. Or maybe if you're running low on battery or you're about to
Yeah,
hit your recording limit, you know what? Forget it. Dream Camera doesn't have a recording limit.
just automatically starts offloading it over Wi-Fi, and I don't know. No, I think that's What about wireless charging?
No, I'm going no. I think
No,
it's so much
okay.
better. Fast charge battery bank. Like you get a battery charging hub that can support fast charging for multiple batteries at once. That is the
And
dream.
one thing too is not all cameras can run the camera while they're charging, so that's a big feature.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
we
needs to
need
be
to have
included.
that for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
the what's interesting about the Sony A7 III is you can charge it while recording, but at some point it just overheats and then you're like, well, that was a nice try, Sony, but it doesn't not quite there.
so definitely not overheating is a big thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, for sure.
however they achieve that, yeah, I think and definitely compatibility with several different lens types would be good.
Whoa, so you would do Canon EF and Sony E?
I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess that part really is more about how they play with people like the Metabones adapter and the different adapters. Giving them the ability to use a bunch of the information and pass it through, so that for example, if you're using Sony and you want to put a Canon lens, you can use the adapter and still get electronic focus and everything.
Yeah, that sounds like a dream camera, Gabe. When are you coming out with this? When can I buy it?
Yeah, well, I mean the I am excited for the EOS R5. I do think that potentially it's when I first started getting into cameras, it was like the 5D Mark III, right? I
Right.
think you were about the same time, And that was the camera that everyone was talking about, and like that was like the one that if you were starting into videography, you dreamed of getting that camera. And I think this is kind of giving me similar feels right now of that. This is bringing Canon back from that the ones that used to be good at video and stuff.
Back from the
And now-
grave.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to take bets on the price for this guy? What do you think the R5 is going to resell for?
I'm gonna go with 4,500.
Yeah, I was thinking like 4,000. Do you think they'll do like a software upgrade package? I don't think Canon does that.
Canon doesn't do that. That's
Yeah.
more Panasonic, which they just released new software update that does 6K RAW.
Whoa,
So,
that's amazing. They
on
can
the
just
on
do
the
that.
S1H.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. The S1H actually has an interesting flip out screen because you get it'll flip out and then it'll flip it's hard to explain, but you get the flips.
And I would say Panasonic, actually, give me also Panasonic's user interface. I know everyone likes Canon's, but I really like Panasonic's user interface. I've used it on their point and shoots, on their more complex cameras, and it's very intuitive. And it's just well done.
I'm a big Canon guy. We should just scrap whatever Sony's doing, throw that out the window. That is garbage. And who puts a touch screen on that you can't actually touch the menu options? That's just ridiculous.
I still don't understand that with the A7 III. I don't know if it's because it's not that sensitive of a touchscreen.
It's like you can tell if someone's touching it.
Yeah, right. It's just like you can touch 1 per second maybe or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that, but I think you bring up this camera sounds incredible, but too bad. I mean, we'll see. We'll wait and see.
Maybe by 2030 we'll be able to buy it. Oh, and also possibly having the 360 editing capabilities of like the Insta 360.
I almost see like 3 dream cameras. One, we have the 360 camera that can do the intense image tracking. It has a software suite to go with it, so you can pull off all these incredible stunts. We have one video focus camera like the C300 Mark III, where you have huge pixels, low noise. It looks beautiful and cinematic and gorgeous. And we have one photo camera where you have maybe a higher resolution sensor. You have a great touchscreen interface. You get, all these features that you would want for each specific camera, and you're good to go. So you just need 3 cameras in your arsenal, maybe a couple lenses, and you're ready to create some banging content.
You only need 3 cameras in your arsenal. You say that's like it's like a normal thing. Yeah, I just have my 3 cameras.
You use your 3 cameras. It's that's what you need. You don't need one. You just 3 of them. I don't know.
I mean, do you have anything else for your dream camera?
I guess before we get out of here, prime lenses
where are we heading?
Zoom lenses.
I like zoom lenses personally.
Yeah, me too. They're just so much more flexible.
I have kind of been swayed by the 90 millimeter macro I got for my Sony 2.8. Very low aperture. It's very nice, but I still love that versatility of, even if it's just that you're using the widest setting and the most zoomed in setting of a zoom lens, because
that's what
honestly,
I
feel
use.
Like, right? That's either what you're not using that middle area.
It's so true, but it's just.
I have a 24-70. I feel like I'm either using at 24-70 or at 50 if I want the no distortion.
You know what? I actually agree with that. I think mine, I use it at 24. I use it at 105 a lot. Sometimes I'll bounce between 35, 50, and 70. Just depends on the shot I'm going for. But yeah, I think that's going to be it. That's our dream camera wish list for all the camera manufacturers listening to this podcast.
We'll tag them.
Thank you so much for making this happen. Wait, what's that? You're not making it happen? Guys, what are you doing?
No.
Get out of here.
They're making it happen. They're just very slowly.
We'll check back in 2030, I will say.
I think let's go give them 5 years.
2025. We'll do a rain check.
Or maybe a yearly check-in.
Yeah, I like that, Gabe. I like it. You know what? See what's on the landscape.
Siri, set a reminder to check back in a year.
Oh, man. All right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Pinch to Zoom podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Pinch to Zoom Pod, Instagram at Pinch to Zoom Podcast, pinchtozoompodcast.com. And please feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps support our show, and we greatly appreciate it.
Spotify needs to add reviews of podcasts or something like that.
Gabe, you bring up a good point. Maybe we should go over our top streaming music features next episode. But either way, that's going to be it. I'm Stetson.
I'm 8K Gabe.
And we are super excited to speak to you in our next episode covering the Mavic Air 2. Take care, guys. Gabe, I think I need to make a correction to my 3-camera setup. You actually need 4 cameras. You need your 360 camera, you need your video camera, you need your photo camera, and then you need your flying camera. forgot about that one.
I mean, any camera can be a flying camera if you throw it.
Frisbee, $20,000.
A one-time flying camera.